Welcome back. In the previous step, we started with creating the counter component. This is the view we have right now. In this step, let's go ahead and add a button and show a counter. Let's see how to do that. The way you can add a button is very simple, right? It's usual. So all that you need to do is say button, and let's say I just say I hard code +1 to it right now. Let's see how it appears. So button +1 and slash button. So it's +1. One of the important things to understand with JSX is you cannot use caps. So if I use caps div, what would happen? It says div is not defined. All HTML elements should be small. So whether it's div, button, any form elements, all of them should be small case. Only the custom components that we create can use the initial cap letter. Now, that warning aside, let's focus on actually adding a counter as well. So I'll just define a span here just to differentiate it from the button so that we can style it differently a little later. And I'll say 0. What we would want to do is when this button is clicked, we would want to increment the value of this. One of the things that I don't really like about it right now is I don't like the styling of it. Now, I would want to add a little bit of styling CSS to this specific counter. How can I do that? The way I can do that is by creating a CSS file for that specific counter. So I'll say right click new file counter.css. So counter.css, and I can add styles in here. For now, what I'll do is I'll import it in. So the way I can import a CSS file, this is not a JavaScript file, this is a CSS file. So I just need to say import // counter.css. To check whether the CSS is working, let's take the button and add a little bit of CSS to the button. So let's just say font size 100px. So it's very clear. Oops, you can see it's font size 100px. So the CSS is working. All that we had to do was create a new file called counter.css and include that inside particular module. Let's now make the button appear a little better. I'll add a background color. Let's make it green. Let's keep it simple. I'll make the font size as 16 pixels. I'll add a padding. Let's make it 15 pixels, 30 pixels. Let's have a font color of white, and let's have a larger button. Let's specify the width as 100 pixels. I'm not really an expert on CSS. I'm trying to just get this thing a little better looking. So now I have +1 appearing a little better. So the styles that we are adding are working fine. So app.js, the button. Now let's actually add a class to this called count. One of the things about JSX is if you want to add a class, the right attribute to use is class name. While class might work in the recent versions of React, always the suggested thing to use is class name, and that's the reason why you would see that in all the JSX which we wrote until now, we would be using class name. So to add a class onto anything, all that you need to do is do class name is equal to count. And now to add CSS to the count, all that we need to do is say dot count and specify whatever you'd want in here. Just to check if it's working, let's say font size 50px. Let's see what would happen. Cool. Let's add a little bit of padding to it as well. Cool. So now I have a button and I have a count which is displayed along it. What should we do next? What we would need to do next is whenever this +1 button is clicked, we would want to increment the value of the count. How do we do that? That's where an important concept called state comes into picture. I'll see you in the next step. Until then, bye-bye.